What's up, everybody? Welcome back to another edition of Money March. This is going to last of a 4-part series. So if you haven't seen the first 3, make sure you go onto my channel and those first 3. But tonight we're going to have I'm going to say a really hard conversation, a really in-depth conversation as much as we can about personal finance tonight. And for some of you, this is going to be new. For some of you, it might be a little bit familiar, but we also want to add value so that whatever level you're at now, excuse me, I just want to preface this by saying the whole reason that I kicked this whole thing off was because, one, April is Financial Literacy Month. And so we're getting ready to gear up into that in a few couple of days. 2 was when we look at the wealth gap between certain populations, I'll leave that there. We look at the wealth gap. That wealth gap has remained really, really large. It's more like a wealth chasm. And so we're trying to make sure that myself, professionals like I'm going to introduce now, are really giving you the resources that you need and we need to help close that. Because the stat that I saw was by 2053, net worth for African Americans was going to be a big 0. That's huge, especially when you think about what we're leaving to generations that come behind us. So we want to talk about these conversations about not only how to create wealth, but how to keep wealth, how to pass that information down from generation to generation so that we can have our own Rockefeller, our own Gates, and we can have our own jobs. These people who have done these things before, this is possible for us. Now, it doesn't mean that you got to be a multimillionaire, multi-billionaire, own this huge company to be able to do that. But there are some tangible things that you could put in place right now in order to get there. So without further ado, I'm going to introduce somebody who I've known for quite a while. She's been an ace just in terms of helping us put our budgets and our finances together. So I want to introduce you guys to Shayna Malcom. Shayna, thank you so much for agreeing to do this for me. And I just want you to introduce yourself to the people, tell them what you do, why you do what you do, and then let's just have a conversation.
Absolutely. Thank you so much for having me. My name is Shayna Malcom. I am the Associate Wealth Manager at Thompson Wealth Management. I am a licensed advisor in the areas of life insurance, securities license, and estate planning. So I help with overall picture and a little bit about how I got into finances and why I love them so much and why we call myself the budget guru or the budgetista is because it started from when I was a child. And you kind of mentioned that finances usually, the way that you do your finances are passed down from the way that you've seen your parents do their finances. So if you think about the way that your parents talk about money or how they handle money, usually you'll notice that it trickles down with each generation on how they view finances and how they go about spending. So when I was raised by a single mother, and my mom every time I used to ask for something, can I get those Jordans? Can I get this? Can I get that? Do the budget. There's a budget. You do the budget and you tell me what's left over after it. So that's how I got really acquainted with budgets. And I really, each day that I do my job, I go through budgets with clients and help them analyze their spending, figure out where their variable expenses are, and then drive them to the appropriate area. So that's how I got started. And that's a little bit about what I do at my current profession.
Awesome. And just to put some transparency out there. So Shayna works for Thompson Wealth Management, who actually is the company that manages our finances. So they are our financial advisors. So this is actually pretty cool to actually get to talk to Shayna and have her share some of the things that she shared with us over the past, just in kind of, helping us get our budget together and make some investments and do some very solid things. So Shayna, just kind of off the bat, we've had discussions about this before. For anybody who is kind of new to the whole financial planning thing and they're just they feel intimidated, they feel a little bit overwhelmed. What would you say? Because I want to we want to just make it tangible. What are some things that they could do right now? Like what's step A just in getting everything together?
Yep. People always ask that. And there's different levels. So first I want to, before I go about steps, just kind of identify where you are. George Thompson is the advisor, the main advisor and owner of Thompson Wealth Management, but he did write a book, multiple books, and the most recent one being the 21-day fast start. And inside that book, it does share that there's five levels that you can be on. One is struggling. So usually that's someone who may have just gotten a job or they lost a job and they're starting from the ground zero, and their goal is just trying to get income. They don't have really enough to pay bills, or their expenses over or higher than their income. So their goal is to make more income, or they're about break even. All right. The next level is steady. So if you're steady, you have a job, but if you're getting paid and you're good with your finances, but if anything happens, you don't have an emergency fund. And he always said if something snap, crackle, or pops, or what I like to say, if life happens, which it always does, no matter what stage of life you're in, you'll immediately fall down to struggling. And then that's kind of where people will be in this little cycle, this little teeter totter cycle between struggling and steady. The next one is solid. So from there, you put enough in emergency fund to cover you if something happens to happen. You're going on vacations once a year. You're doing the income that you have is at a good solid point. But again, if something catastrophic were to happen, you would withdraw all your funds. Usually, people would have to pull from their 401ks and those type of emergencies. So usually, if you've saved up items, but they're not allocated properly to where if there's an emergency, you pull from a resource that will set you back to progress forward. The next level is surplus. So at that stage, you're kind of operating in you have enough income, enough to cover all your expenses. Great with savings. You put places. You have retirement account built. You're kind of sort of on your way to retirement, and just making sure that if when you do stop working, you have enough to be able to continue to live without having to work any longer. And then the next level of service, where you're pretty much good. You don't have to worry about anything. You're just operating in your purpose, and you've had enough income that you're not necessarily concerned with finances. You're just operating in what God would have you to do on this earth. So, when you think about where you are, and you can think about where you are in physically in those different areas, each step requires you to have a disciplined process in order to realize where you are, and then to be so disciplined in what you're doing to save to get to the next step. Those that are struggling, we got to figure out what we have to sacrifice in order to get more income to get to solid. Once we're at solid, we have to figure out what we have to sacrifice as far as spending in order to get to, the next level, or as far as additional income is concerned, or driving income that you're already getting to different areas, which we may talk about later. So the first thing that you need to do is probably accountability, and then also analyzing where you are. People will guess, or they'll be like, you know what, I think I'm in steady, or I think I'm in solid. And people usually guess down to where they think that they are, because they don't want to say that they're at the next level. But you don't know, I don't know, and we don't know until you actually create a budget, look at where you are, list your assets, list your retirement goals, and have a financial plan.
And you said a couple of key words that really resonated with me. So the first one was discipline, um, because I think a lot of times for particular people, we're used to living a certain lifestyle because we work hard, we want to play hard, we want to enjoy all the fruits of our labor, just enjoy life. And
Yeah.
so I think a lot of times we will, not only that, just to keep up with the Joneses, because we want to have this appearance that we have it all together, that we're living well. But then, when reality, when we peek behind the curtain,
Yep.
we see that there's some things that aren't necessarily right in terms of how our finances are. So, in terms of discipline, what can you tell everybody? Like, what's one key thing that they can do to just live that out? Because it's one thing to hear it; it's another thing to actually do it. Right? We don't want to just be hearers of the word. We want to be
Yep.
doers of the word. So, what's one thing that they could do to just exercise discipline? Because I think a lot of times when we think about that, we think that, oh, I got to just cut everything off and I can't enjoy anything. And then it
Yeah.
becomes this whole laborious task where we want to do it, but we don't want to do it because we don't want to give up all of that stuff. So what's one thing
Absolutely.
that they can do to just kind of move forward in the disciplinary track?
I always say it starts with the budget. Like the budget is the groundwork. So people usually, some people, not my people, but some people hate the word budget, and they'll think of it as like a strenuous task. But I would challenge people, those that are really wanting to figure out how they can get to the next level, or where their expenses and income are driving right now or what's most important to them is by opening up an Excel spreadsheet, opening up your transactions for the previous month, and literally going line by line and entering and transferring them. In one column, putting all of your utilities, all of the things that make your life go, starting with your housing, your utilities, cell phone, car note, all of the fixed things that you're just like, okay, this is what it takes for me to be me. All right. Then you list them against groceries. That line item usually has its own. So I would just put groceries in its own line item. I would put dining out in its own line item, and then miscellaneous expenses in its own line item. And then really look at you can, on Excel, you can make a total at the bottom and it will show you what your fixed expenses are to run your life versus what it takes for you to feed yourself, versus what it takes you to be you. Now, in each of those areas, you'll be able to determine from the total of all of that how much it takes for you to run your lifestyle, but you also need to compare that against your income. So, in some cases, your income will exceed that number. In other cases, your expenses will exceed that number, and we'll be seeing multiple savings transfers or multiple transactions that are replenishing funds to make the extra stuff that doesn't necessarily fit into the budget work because we're just putting money in the savings and moving it back, playing a little tennis game with the savings and the checking account, just bouncing it back and forth. So, in order to really figure that out, we want to list that, and then from there we can determine the next steps. Where on that spreadsheet can you shave, or are you already doing what needs to be done? How much are you putting into the savings? You should be saving at least 10%. Should be saving at least 10%. How much is in your emergency fund? It should at least be 3 months. If you're good, it should be at least 6 months. All right. Then from there, you figure out what are your other goals. Do I have a travel fund? When I need to go somewhere or travel somewhere, am I heavily using a credit card and having to pay that back and being set back by the travel that I have to take when needs arise? If we have children, what is the amount that's in the budget baked for the children? Um, they need clothes on specific times of year, or usually Christmas time is where people's budget will go array because we're so excited and we want to make sure they have a good Christmas, but we haven't properly prepared for it. And that's what a monthly budget is going to allow us to do. It's going to figure out what's most important and being able to make sure that we figure out what number you personally can drive into the areas that will make sure that your budget represents the best way that you like to live. Because I do like to share, wealth looks different for everyone. Some people feel wealthy because they purchase a house, and some people feel wealthy because they purchase a specific car, or the dollar amount that's in their savings account makes them feel like, yes, I'm doing this thing called life the best way that I know how. But at each stage, once you acquire something else, there's always, to get to the next level, a sacrifice or discipline that we need to do in order to make sure that we can take it a step further, or we'll always remain at that same level continuously until we make a change.
Right. And you mentioned snap crackle pop. I laughed at that because that's what she told us. So what would you say is beneficial for people to kind of work on like right now? Because there are some of us who, if something were to happen, we don't have what I would call those emergency funds to take care of something. Car breaks down.
Yes.
Now we can't get to work because we don't have the money, or we can't get the kids to school or anything
Yeah.
like that. So what would you say would be a safe buffer just in terms of establishing a savings account or an emergency fund account?
Yes, that's good. I say start with 3 months. Usually, the goal, especially when clients come on board with us, if you don't have 3 months worth of expenses saved up, and you should know that number, because even two, I'll say, do you have an emergency fund? Say, yep, I got $5,000 in there. Okay, how much are your monthly expenses? Oh, 7,500. So if something were to happen today or tomorrow, we only have not even a full month's worth of expenses saved up. So we want to look at how much you bring in. Some people like to do three times that number, or do three times the number that you're doing for expenses, just to make sure that if you lost a job today or tomorrow, you have 3 months saved up. Usually 3 months will cover those items that happen if your car needs a tire. Maintenance is usually something that happens, or your registration, or any annual the annual memberships we always forget about, and they just happen at the wrong moment when we just like, we might have thought that we were good, and then here comes the AAA, or here comes Costco taking from the money that we thought we were we were allotting somewhere else. So we do want to make sure that in that budget too, outside of monthly expenses, we put into the wants and the must haves and the if something shall happen category. So I would say 3 months worth of expenses first. From there, then you can move up to saving at least six. Um, and then usually if you don't have a home, because we like to make sure that that's in the goal too, once you hit six, we're kind of keeping that savings game going, so that way you can save up a down payment to buy a house, and that's going to project you to the next level, which you may have talked about already in some of your other series. But the first thing to do to get started is figuring out that number and then multiplying it by three. And then if you got that, multiply that by six. And then from there, we will look at some other areas to figure out what your goals are, to figure out what else we should be saving for.
Awesome. Okay. So everybody who's just joined us tonight, welcome aboard. Again, I'm talking to Shayna Malcom over at Thompson Wealth Management, and we're just talking about personal finance tonight. If you guys have questions, and I know you do, if you have questions, leave them in the chat. We're gonna answer your questions live here tonight. So again, if you got questions, leave them in the chat. I'm gonna make sure that we get to your questions as much as we can. So we talked about budgeting. We talked about building up a reserve, or what I would call an emergency fund. Would you advise people who are starting on that very bottom stage, right? So let's say they've got debt, they've got credit card debt, they've taken vacations or anything else.
Yes.
Would you suggest that they pay those off before they start saving, or should they start saving and then look to pay those off later? Like, what's the order of operations that should go?
That's a good question. Um, what people usually do is they will start to save, and then eventually something happens and they will use the credit card, or they'll take the full balance of the savings and put it on the credit card when something catastrophic happens. So we kind of want to be doing both at the same time. If you have credit cards, what I want you to do too, this is action item you can take from this, is list all of them. You're going to list them from the lowest balance to the highest balance, along with their minimum payments, right next to each other. Some people like to put interest rates next to those in that category, but that just kind of takes your mind off the focus of what you're really wanting to do and wanting to look at. And that's making sure that you figure out what the minimum payment for each credit card is, and then what a debt eliminator number could be. So the way that you can do both at the same time is taking $100 and just applying it to your lowest credit card balance and just focusing on paying that down. Now, if the I do want to stress that the interest rate on your credit card can dictate how much they're charging you in interest. So $100 might not be enough to use as a debt eliminator. So what you'll want to do is look at what they're charging in interest and make sure you add that on top of your minimum payment, or whatever extra dollar amount you feel you can do, to focus on one card at a time, and then use the snowball effect. That usually will help people, even though some people may say, "Well, Dave Ramsey told me to start with the highest interest rate first, and that's going to get me where I need to be." We subscribe at Thompson Wealth Management with just starting with the lowest balance, because it will keep you disciplined. Like, it'll keep you on track. It'll keep you motivated. You Once you see that balance go down and you've wiped out the lowest one, you can then take that dollar amount, whether it's $100, 150 plus the minimum payment, and roll it to the next one. So you can focus on that as your debt eliminator. That will be the debt part. And then at the same time, you want to match that dollar amount. If you can afford to match the same 100 that you're putting towards debt, towards savings. So that way you're doing both of them at the same time. You're eliminating debt and you're also building a savings. So that way, if something does happen, we don't necessarily have to use the card that we paid off. We have some buffer where we can pull from the savings, or do a combination of both that doesn't allow us to be back in the same position we were before we started our plan. So both at the same time is the best way. It's the most motivating way. It has the highest level of achievement, so where you're actually seeing your savings growing and you're feeling good, like, okay, the savings account looks good, okay, and then the debt's going down at the same time, which will allow you to continue on that path of accountability.
And I think that's important because a lot of times the discipline comes in, even when you think about something like going to the gym, right? We don't
Yeah.
see results right away. We tend to get motivated and stop going. But if we could see results right away at the gym, we would always be at the gym. It's the same
Yeah.
way with our finances. Sometimes we don't see those results right away. And so we decide that, you know what, this isn't working, or we just lose interest in doing it any longer. This is where the discipline, that D word, comes in.
Yep.
Discipline to stick it through. Shayna talked about something that's really important. I've talked about this in previous videos, but she mentioned interest rate. The reason that I'm going to talk about this right now and why it's so important, this is where you want to pay attention to what the Fed is doing right now. Because normally when I'm talking about the Fed funds rate, it's relating to mortgages, and that really doesn't have a direct correlation. That Fed funds rate is directly tied to something called the prime rate. And that prime rate is directly tied to what you pay in interest on your credit cards. So if you notice over the past year and some change, your credit card interest has probably shot up quite substantially. So that same, let's say you got a $5,000 balance and you may have been paying one amount. When that Fed funds rate shoots up, so does your payment amount, right? Because it's directly tied to that. So there are some schools of thought in terms of paying off the highest interest rate first, but I would say start with the lowest balance, knock that out because that'll give you. That's why it's called the snowball. When you think about a snowball rolling downhill in the cartoons, usually it rolls downhill and it turns into this big, monstrous, big looking rock of a snowball. That's the whole premise behind it, and that's why you want to start with the lowest balance because you want to be able to pick up some quick wins so
Yes.
that it keeps you motivated to keep doing it over and over and over again. Eventually, you'll look up, you'll be debt free, and all that money that you were paying, now you can use that to put into some other investment vehicles, which is a perfect segue. So, I don't want to give like financial advice just in terms of what you should invest in, but there are certain vehicles that you probably want to take a look at. So, Shayna, can you talk because we've talked about 401ks, we've
Mhm.
talked about life insurance policies. We didn't go a whole bunch in depth in terms of life insurance. We kind of lost I lost signal, so I'm gonna have to bring my guest back to talk about that one.
Okay.
But and then obviously people know about stocks and possibly bonds and things of that
Mhm.
nature. What is a good place for anybody who's looking to start investing? Where should they look first? And I know that's kind of a loaded question because one, you need to know where they're at in the particular life, and two, sometimes it has to do with age.
Yes.
So if we just take the average person, let's say it's the average, I don't know, 30-year-old female who is working her job. She's been on the job for a couple of years. She's thought about investing in her 401k, but she wants to have fun and travel and go out with the girls and do all this other stuff. Where should she start in terms of building out her financial future so that by the time she is in retirement age, she can live comfortably and is not relying on the government or possibly her children at that
Yeah.
age to take care of her? And
Absolutely.
ladies, I just use female. I can easily say male. Don't hurt me. I know it's Women's History Month, so don't
That's
beat
right.
the
Stop
messenger.
picking
I'm
on
just
us.
trying to relay like what we can do to help you guys out to get to that next level.
Absolutely. It's so funny that you mentioned women because that's like the majority of our client base are women, which you would assume that they would be men because you would think men know investments and they're the ones that invest. So the first place that we always drive our investment funds would start with that 401ks, the 403bs, just making sure that you are investing in the company that has invested in you. They're giving you a vehicle with a really really large dollar amount that you can allot to. If you look at the dollar amount that you can contribute to a 401k versus an IRA, it's a lot higher, and you can get benefits for putting into a retirement vehicle. But usually, that's usually our first place where we get introduced to investments, which at that point we're kind of don't know. You sign up at your job, and then they're asking you to sign up for your 401k and pick your investments, and you're just like, I'm gonna just pick this, and that because I want to do the direct deposit slip. I want to know where y'all gonna put my money at. So, you want to start there. You want to make sure that if your employer's matching, you put in what your employer matches, and that's usually the place that we start. And then revisit what elections you first started with, and get help. If you don't know what you're looking at, you need to get someone. That's like going to a doctor and then asking a dentist what's wrong with your arm. Like if you don't know what you're looking at, you need to go to someone who knows what a financial advisor to be able to help you allocate your investments for your retirement in the best way possible. And then usually there they have some great funds that don't cost a lot of money to purchase, where you can get a lot of bang for your buck to be able to buy and invest in the things that you probably feel like you want to be investing in the first place. So if you already have that and you're like, all right, I've been put in there and I kind of know what I'm doing there, but I want to do something separate. We always say your banks, your credit unions, or even there's apps that you can start it with investing on. Just doing something. We have plenty of clients that outside of their 401k, they're scooping a set dollar amount, whether it's $25 a month, $50 a month, and using the apps that are now readily available to the average consumer, like your Robin Hoods and just buying things that you would normally use on a day-to-day basis, whether it's the Targets, the Google, the Amazons, those type of things. They let you buy partial shares of those so you can just purchase things and be an investor in the things that we call new eyes, that you look around and you see that you use each and every day. But the first place, like I like to share, first place is going to be through your employer. You want to put as much as you can in there. That's going to be the place where when you turn around and you're ready to retire, you're going to look back and people always say, I wish I would have started this sooner. I wish I would have gave more to this area. Um, that or buy a home. They always say that too. I wish I'd have bought a home back in the day. You know how much this house would have been. So those are the two areas that we always get from our clients, that they wish they would have started earlier or put more in there as soon as possible. So if you don't know how to change your allocations, you can go to your HR and they can let you know, like, okay, who's the platform, who is the advisor that's over this for the entire group, and start asking questions. Meet with them, review the statement, or come to Thompson Wealth Management. We can help, but you need to have eyes on there. You need to be driving some sort of income into a retirement account or an investment account, because that's the only way that it's going to earn interest.
Absolutely. And don't be afraid to ask those questions. I think a lot of times, too, is for those of us who are maybe seasoned professionals, we don't want to ask those questions because it makes us seem like we don't have that, we're not intelligent enough to make those picks. You don't have that luxury to let your ego get in the way of this right now, right? You're trying to max out as much as you can with your employer and make sure that your retirement is set up. Because truth be told, if some of us are relying on Social Security, it may not be there. And again, if you're relying on children, I talked about this in the past. If you're saving for your children's college fund, but you're not saving for your own personal retirement, that can come back and bite you hard. And I want to stress this. I know you love your babies and they love you too. But when they become adults, they're going to have their own set of responsibilities to take care of, especially if they're married and have kids of their own. And you might not be part of that plan per se, right? And just in order of being a dependent of your children. So you want to make sure that you don't leave your financial future in their hands. Again, your baby's going to treat you well, hopefully, but you want to make sure that you're taking charge of this and not leaving it up to somebody else to take care of you in the event that something happens where you can't work anymore, or you just, you need money because you're retired now. I know that has been something that's been big in the news lately, is that people are working past their retirement. And the
Mhm.
reason that they've done that is because they didn't set everything up in the beginning the proper way.
Yep.
So, Shayna, I want you to speak to the people about just in terms of, okay, let's say they got their 401k, they got that maxed out.
Hmm.
They're good on that level. And I'm going to come back to this in a second. So let me put a pin in that. For those of you who have a 401k, you may be thinking about leaving your employer. You're transitioning, or maybe you got laid off or something of that nature. I am going to stress to you, and you've heard this on a past episode. When they ask you what you want to do with those funds, do not take the check. The reason, Shayna, tell them why
Yeah.
they don't want to take the check.
Oh my gosh. So what normally happens is you think that this is like a blessing because you're just like, okay, well, yes, this is my money. I want to take this and use it. The tax burden that it is that you just take and put in tax and withdraw those funds and get hit with federal and state taxes totally diminishes the hard work that you did by putting all that into a retirement account. That account is not meant to be the cushion of the emergency fund or whatever, paying off debt and just restarting. That will change the trajectory of your retirement by so much if you decide to do that at that point. Now, some people may say, Shayna, you don't know my financial situation. You don't know what happened to me. I had to use it. I had to start over, and it is what it is. But people will always say that I wish I would have known what another option would have been. how heavily I would have been taxed or what tax bracket that amount of income pushed me into because I added that on top of the income that I had already received that year. And just totally gave Uncle Sam a bunch of money for just to have it liquid in an account that I may have not necessarily used at that time anyway, or redirected to another asset. So just roll it over into another. You can do an IRA at your bank, your credit union, and then have a strategy on if you actually are in dire need of these funds, which we have come across clients that are. At this point, there's nothing that we can do but take something from it. Then we need to figure out what that dollar amount is. We need to figure out how to strategize when we will do the withdrawal, so that way maybe it could push us into 2 different years. Maybe we can do some now, and in the hopes that we won't need the second withdrawal later. But roll it over, or just leave it there. That I would just say, just leave it there too, because taking the check and depositing in your account is just way dire than good. Way dire
Would
than good.
you now? Would you suggest if because some people have the mentality of like they cut me loose, I'm not leaving my money over at my employer.
Absolutely.
Would you recommend? And I know this is probably going to vary from a case by case basis, but would you
Mhm.
recommend they leave it there or they roll it over into something like a Roth IRA?
So the Roth IRA may do the same. It all depends on your tax situation. So you want to consult your tax professional before you roll it over. If it's in a pre-tax 401k and we roll it over to a Roth IRA, we're taking a pre-tax account and moving it into an after-tax account, and that may still have some tax implications for you if you're doing that too. Now, some people, and it is a good strategy, what they call a Roth conversion, may take some of that 401k and puts a portion of it into a Roth so they can take the least amount of taxes during the year that I'm not working next year. Or I haven't worked this year. I'm going to put it in there. I didn't make a lot this year. And now you're taxed at a less percentage than you would have been if you do it when you retire and you're receiving all your retirement assets. So there is strategies that you can use when you're rolling over your 401k. If you don't want to keep it where I'm leaving, taking all my money with me. Your bank usually can open a 401, an IRA for you, credit unions, or you can go onto any platform, Fidelity, Charles Schwab, or find a financial advisor that can assist you with rolling over the funds and just holding off and waiting before you do anything further. So we can just make sure that it's a great strategic move and it puts you in a better position as an opportunity than having it be an implication on paying more than you'd want to pay for doing the withdrawal.
Man, see, I just learned something because I could have taken half of my 401k and put it into a Roth instead of all into. But
Mhm.
hindsight is 2020. You live and learn. But
That's
these are
right.
why we have these conversations, right? To
Mm.
give you guys the information, give you the knowledge, and arm you with it. So one of the big things that came out of out of the pandemic was this whole crypto kick. What is your take on crypto? Should we be investing in crypto? Should we stay away from crypto? Um, just like, what do you think about that? Because I'm gonna be honest. Like at first, I was like, I'm not gonna do that. But then I kept hearing these stories, and I was like, you know what? Let me pick up a couple dollars of crypto here and there. Now, I didn't go all out, but I
Right.
did take a little bit of money that I had, and I was like, you know what? This is. It was almost like when I was a gambler. Well, not that I was ever a gambler like that, but if you ever gone to Vegas and some of you would
Hmm.
be like, I'm only using this $50 to go into the casino.
Absolutely.
You have your 50 and that's it. You cut it
Yep.
off. I had a little extra money and I was like, you know what? If I lose this money, I'm okay with it. So let
Absolutely.
me just see what will happen if I invested it. Now
Absolutely.
it's gone up, taking some hits, but for me, I'm thinking of it more of as a long term play to see what happens, as opposed to can I buy this lottery ticket
Yep.
and cash out immediately?
Right.
And I think that's where a lot of us are kind of split between the two. I would venture to say more people are looking at it as a lottery ticket. But what do you say about the whole crypto phase and kind of what you're seeing in the realm that you're in? What could be a pitfall and what could be a benefit?
Absolutely. I remember when it was this new shiny thing under the sun, and everyone, we didn't know much about it. So some people were hesitant about it. Other people were diving right in because we're hearing and we're seeing people making this large dollar amount on something that's not really tangible, and we don't really know when we can use it, or if it will go up, or even what's driving the price to go up, which we people will speculate that it's like word of mouth that's driving it up. As soon as you hear about something that's good, like you're, oh, let me buy some of that, let me get some of that, because if it does go up, it's like the lottery. You will be a part, earn a piece of the pie. So we don't deter people from getting crypto the same way we wouldn't deter someone back in the day when Facebook first went public. I kind of correlate them to that, because when Facebook first went public, we didn't know how it would do. We did not know that it would become this big entity, and it was taking a chance. Now, do you want to go and take all of your assets and throw it into the chance that it may become a big thing? No. And that's why diversification is important, because you want to spread your eggs out, so that way they're in different baskets, and then you can participate in those things that may take go up and down, and more so you want to take a dollar amount that you are okay with. If it were not here today or tomorrow, you wouldn't have a devastated loss. So think about it the same way you would as Starbucks money, or the same way you would as, I want to grab something from 7-Eleven, or I want to get a lottery ticket. A dollar amount that you're okay with just putting it here and seeing what happens. But if it takes a nosedive, you're not like, oh my gosh, I wish I would have never done that. Like, this puts me in a financial burden, instead of just having it be something that we are excited to watch. And if it does do something, then we're glad that we participated.
Okay, cool. Yeah, I picked up some and I was like, yeah, I don't know how this is all gonna turn out, but let me. I don't want to be one of those people who's like, man, I missed it. I should
I
have
know
did
that.
right,
Or are
because I
those?
saw that happen with some other investments where I was like, Amazon, man, who would have thought? Oh
Yes.
my gosh, Google, who would have thought?
You're right.
So at this point, I'm like, you know what? Don't just turn your nose up at an
That's
opportunity.
right.
Let's see. I won't throw all the eggs in the basket, but I'll put it. I'll put a couple shell pieces in there and
Absolutely.
see what we can come up with.
Absolutely.
Now, in the past, we talked about, and again, for those of you who just joined us, I'm talking to Shayna Malcom over at Thompson Wealth Management. We're just talking about personal finance and how to get your financial house in order, the things that you can do to level up, essentially, to go from where you are to where you want to be.
Mhm.
Um, we've talked about some other stuff in the past in terms of trust and estate planning. We talked about life insurance. And is that something that, Thompson Wealth Management does? Do you guys offer life insurance advice or vehicles? Because one of the things that I looked at that came up in the past conversation was, our kids got a 529 plan.
Mhm.
But then it was, you might want to get, instead of that, what if you did a life insurance policy on them that had a cash value attached to it? And I was like, oh, that's actually that sounds like pretty good advice. What would you say to everybody who's kind of, because I know when we talk about life insurance, more times than not, people of color don't want to talk about it because they think if we talk about life insurance, that somehow death is coming
Right.
soon. I don't necessarily understand that. All of us are going to transition one day. It just depends on how you transition, how you're going to leave the people that you leave behind. What
Mhm.
situation are you going to leave them in? Are they going to be in a situation where they're scrambling, sitting on one of the streets with a cardboard sign saying, please help us, bury our loved one?
Yeah.
Or are they going to be able to sit back and say, everything's covered? We don't have to worry about anything because, mom or dad or whoever else left us in a really good position. But
Absolutely.
just the difference between, investing in a 529 for your kids' college fund as opposed to life insurance. Do you have an opinion on which way to go with either of those?
And I will stress again, it's proper planning to be able to do both. Um, if you think about the wealthiest individuals and how, when they pass away, what happens, life insurance is always a part of their portfolio. They've always invested in life insurance, and they've leveraged in permanent life insurance, being able to leverage and have the ability to use it for different mechanisms. Some people will have a policy for cash value, and they will pull some of that to help their kids go to college. I've seen clients. You also can have life insurance that will help you with long-term care needs in the future when you're during retirement. At the same time, still having something that goes to a 529, because that can be allocated for specific things that you would like to do, or whether they decide to go to college or not, you can still kind of use those funds to be able to pass down to them as an incentive to build something, whether you're not for sure going to college, but you want to make sure that you have assets that you can be passed down for that. So whether it's buying a computer, or books and things like that might be an area that you want to make sure you're funneling funds into. So you want to for sure do a 529, but you also want to look at life insurance, and you want to make sure, we stress permanent insurance, and you want to have permanent insurance because yes, it does build cash value. And people say, well, permanent insurance is so expensive. But the later you get it, the more expensive it is. But what's more expensive? Not having it, being able to bury your loved one, or something happening where your parents need long-term care and they have to live with you, or you're acting as a caretaker and you have expenses now baked into your budget that are your parents' expenses in order to try to carry them. So what normally happens, especially in our African Americans, is that we will not properly plan, and then when even if the grandma was successful and purchased a home, she didn't have proper planning to pass the home down correctly, or she didn't have proper planning to bury herself, or she didn't have her assets labeled in a way that would allow other individuals to manipulate them to the best of the ability in order to continue, let them continue. So life insurance is very important. 529s are very important, but estate planning is a part of all three of those, because you want to make sure that as you level up to each level, you don't push down the generation ahead of you by becoming a burden when you didn't properly plan after you thought you were doing as best as you can and you did retire, but then you're using your retirement assets so drastically for long-term care, or you pull out of the 401k to send a child off to college, or things of that nature. We're just reallocating in the wrong places, and not necessarily properly planning to have something in all of the areas. That's the only way to be covered.
Awesome. Again, if you guys got questions, put them in the chat because we want to make sure that we answer any questions that you have. Please post them in the chat. So again, we can just answer the questions that you have. This is really about you guys. That's really the whole reason I did this. Is I wanted you all to get the information, because a lot of times this is information that either wasn't passed down from our parents or our grandparents, and then we have to try to turn around and pass it down to our kids. But when we don't really know what we don't know, how do we pass that information down? And when I was looking at the stats, it said that when we talk about generational wealth, because that's really what I'm really all about, is building generational wealth to pass down to the generations, because the Bible says that a wise man leaves an inheritance for his children's children. And so we want to make sure that we're practicing wisdom by adhering to that. But the stat that I read that was that by the third generation, 90% of that generational wealth is lost. That's either because the information wasn't passed down, or the discipline to adhere to those standards wasn't passed down. That's really what, like, I want to stress those enough to you. That's why you want to just be financially literate so that you can pass it down to your kids. Now, there's a push right now in California that financial literacy should become part of the curriculum and the school system, but I wouldn't leave it up to the state or the school district to educate my kids on what assets, liabilities, and equity are, right? You want to make sure that you're having those conversations, because at the end of the day, like I told you in a previous post or a previous live stream, you're a brand, your household is a business. And any business that is not looking at its bottom line at least every month is probably going to be doomed to fail. You want to know where your dollars are going, and you want your dollars to work for you. So you want to be able to allocate money to places that will actually make you money, as opposed to it just being all of a liability. Now, whether you're trying to buy a house, whether you want to start a business, all of that's kind of debatable of what that is going to be. But again, you have solid investment options that you can choose, and you want to make sure that your dollars are working for you as opposed to you working for your dollars. Because at some point, your winter days where you can no longer work are going to come upon you. So you want to just make sure that you're starting this off right now, so that when those days come, you've already planned out exactly how things are supposed to go. Now, of course, you don't know how exactly things are going to go because we don't know what's going to happen with our health or
Yep.
loved ones or anything like that. But when you have those type of options, you have that type of leverage. It just feels good.
Yes.
I'm thinking about just before the pandemic hit. She'll probably be mad at me if I put it out like that. But just before the pandemic hit, my mom suffered an aneurysm. We were just coming back from another trip from someplace, and my mom suffered an aneurysm. I had to jump back on a plane and fly back out to Colorado where she lived at the time. Now, when they got her to the hospital, the nurse was like, "Wow, you should consider yourself blessed because 90% of the people that come in here for this, they never leave the hospital." So now I'm sitting here thinking about, okay, what does this mean for her long term care? What do we do? And the part that just was like, man, she didn't financially plan well when I was younger in order to have that stuff solidified when she got older. Now I have to figure out how do I take care of that and how do I maneuver? And there was just a whole bunch of missing pieces. And I wish I had known a lot of the stuff that I know now. I wish I would have known then, like way before this ever happened, because maybe I could have set some things up for her so that when this did happen, it was already taken care of. And that's why I want to, again, I'm stressing all this to you guys because at some point, life is going to happen. Life is going to life.
Yes.
That's just the nature of what it does. And you
Yep.
want to make sure that you are doing the very best that you can to make sure that you're taking care of not only yourself, but the people that you really care about. If you say you really care about them, put this stuff into practice and start setting it up now so that in the event that life does happen, you're not caught off guard. And I see that happen a lot with people. We get caught off guard because we weren't expecting certain things to happen. Who I wasn't expecting my mom to have an aneurysm,
Yeah.
but I heard stories about people who talked about parents who had aneurysms, who had strokes, who had heart attacks. It never dawned on me, this could be you.
Yeah.
Start setting it up now because if something happens, you don't want to be trying to figure out what they're going to do with your mom.
Yeah.
So, um, Shayna, one of the other things that constantly comes up is, we talk about real estate. That's kind of where my area expertise has been. We talk about real estate, and there are some schools that say if you purchase a house, it's not an asset, it's a liability. Others will say if you purchase a house, it is an asset. Um, what does Thompson Wealth Management like consider that? Because I've heard other people talk about this in the past, and I just kind of want to get your take on it because some of you out there who may be thinking about purchasing a house, you're looking at where prices are, you're looking at where interest rates are, and you're like, nah, I'm good right now. I'm gonna wait. And in fact, I'm gonna wait because purchasing a house is more of a liability than it is an asset. What do you all say to that?
We definitely look at it as not only an asset and an investment that needs to be in your portfolio. Just same way you would have a 401k, you need to be purchasing property. Real estate is the only asset that if you look at that over time, it's always gone up. Always, no matter what state you're in, even if you live East Coast versus the West Coast, that value of that home continues to rise and it will only continue to rise. Even when people look back in 2008 and they're like, oh, I would never be in the real estate market. Did you see what happened? But do you see where we are now? That real estate market will always recalibrate, always be an asset that you want to make sure that you have investments in, because it will give you, it is the only asset that will allow you to have leverage to be able to pass it down from generation to generation, and own something tangible. So those that call it a liability, yes. Are you making a payment to your mortgage every month? Yes. Are you carrying a large debt? Is one of the biggest purchases in your life that you'll ever make. But rent will only continue to go up. So you're actually saving to invest in the ability to control that payment in your monthly budget, for years time to come. So you need it in there. Those that say I'm gonna wait, stop waiting. I That is like the biggest thing that is has thrown off the trajectory of being able to have a full portfolio is just waiting so long to think about the market recalibrating and I'm going to jump in when the interest rates do this. The best time to buy is when you're able to buy. So you need to focus on your personal economy to say, okay, how much can I save? How much do I have as a down payment? And when you have enough and you get qualified to figure out what you're able to purchase it when you can, so that way later on, if we can finance those interest rates, we can do that later on, and in the hopes of having a lower interest rate for a longer period of time. But at least you knew that when you purchased that house, the dollar amount of the mortgage fit comfortably into your budget, and you knew that you were able to buy something that was only going to appreciate years to come. So don't wait. Don't wait.
That's been my advice to you all. You all know how I feel about that. If you can afford to do it at today's interest rates and at a specific price point, if it's not stretching you too thin, start the process now. As Shayna said, you can always go back and refinance later. And let's just say interest rates never go down. Let's say they go up. Well, you're still in a good position because you're still paying a lower interest rate. And it's always going to be fixed, unlike rent, which could change
Yes.
over time. And you're already in the real estate game, right? It's just what side of the coin you want to be on. You're either going to be on the side of you're paying rent, so you're paying somebody else's mortgage, or you're
Yes.
paying your own mortgage. And the way I like to look at it is you're not necessarily losing money or spending money. You're transferring it. You're transferring it from the bank to the bricks. The bricks are the investment vehicle because at some point, as Shayna said, those values appreciate over time. If you hold that house for 20, 30 years and pay it off, now you have an asset that is paid off. If you decide that you want to sell it because you want to downside, or you want to pull out some of the equity in the house and go buy something else
Yep.
that's going to generate you what we call mailbox money or residual money every single month. Those are the strategies that you can use when you have that type of option, but you have to set yourself up in order to do so.
Yep.
So again, if you are somebody that's waiting to purchase real estate, and if you don't have it, nobody's like, I'm not going to force you and say, hey, just purchase it, even though you can't afford it, just do it anyway. No,
Mhm.
because it's going to put you in a position where you purchase it and you lose it, and then now you're in a worse
Yeah.
state. But if you can, you're comfortable at where the interest rate is. You're comfortable at where that monthly mortgage payment is. Don't try to time out the market because you want to see where interest rates are going to go. Because the problem with that is you and 999,999 other people, excuse me, are waiting for the exact same thing.
Mhm.
And when that happens, you all jump off the fence at the exact same time. So now
Yes.
instead of competing against maybe one, two, possibly five other people, now you're back in the situation where you're competing against 20 people. And
Mhm.
that pushes up the price point even
Yep.
more. So when you
Yep.
try to time the market like that, you're not really doing yourself a great service. You're actually doing yourself a great disservice. Um, Shayna, so really quick, one of the things too that I wanted to ask you about is we talked about estate planning. Um, what is seeing without divulging a whole bunch of financial advice? What is something that you're seeing maybe come down the pike that people need to keep their eyes on in terms of that could possibly be an investment vehicle that I can take without necessarily telling them, like, again, I'm not offering you financial advice. Shayna's not your financial advisor, but she knows things. Use that information to your benefit. So, what things are you seeing come down the pike? And the reason I'm asking this question is because George Thompson, who was our FA, when we were thinking about buying, we were looking at one particular area, and he said, you should really look at this other area. And at first, we were like, I don't know about that one, George. But then as we started to do a little bit more research, we were like, oh, you know what? I think he might be onto something. So we bought in that area. Now, has it panned out the way we thought it was going to pan out? Not necessarily yet, but I
Okay.
see the writing on the wall. I see what's coming down the pipe. I see the things that are happening right now. So within the next 7, 8, 9, 10 years, it will probably be what I thought it was going to be. This is where you want to have those new eyes and start
Mhm.
looking at the opportunities that are happening. Don't just look at the areas that are already booming and go, "Oh, I want to move there because everybody's moving there." Cool, you're going to pay a premium for that.
Yeah.
Think about where you can go and use the information that you have to say, where do I think people are going? And the analogy was put to me was skate to where the puck is going, not
Mhm.
where it's already been at.
Yep.
Right.
Yep.
So Shayna, what are some things that you're seeing in your world right now where you're like, ooh, that could possibly be something that people might want to take a look at?
So it's that's a unique question. And it's unique to each individual, and usually I cannot give investment advice. But what I always share with each individual person is, you're around people. You have a specific niche, and you're around people that also are indicators of that niche. So when you're thinking about investments, because I can say like, oh, okay, Medicare, go here, or I can say, oh, invest in real estate, or invest overseas because XYZ politics. But if you're not in that niche, or you're not around those individuals, you're not going to necessarily know when to get out, or how much to put in, or what exactly I'm talking about. So what we do subscribe to is having those new eyes. What are you currently investing in? What do you see the people around in the industry that you are in investing in? What are the drivers in the specific field that you're in, that you're noticing that, okay, we need this, like this is what makes my industry do well, and then invest in that. If you're in the medical field, you would be looking around, and you would have been, well, probably now, before the whole thing has come to light, you would be saying like, everybody is trending off Ozempic, like, what is this? Like, should I buy into this? Should I do that? Same thing. If you're in real estate, and you're thinking about buying, you want to buy a mutual fund that has a bunch of mortgage companies in it, or whatever. If you're working at Target, you want to buy Target stock because you see the sales that are happening. So it's not necessarily about figuring out where the puck is going, as far as it relates to diving into that one specific thing, but remaining diversified and investing in everything that you're looking around and seeing people buy is the best place to start. But also, you're knowledgeable in your field. So what is it that is driving your company to be successful, and what you have the knowledge on that particular thing, that you can say like, hey, I'm going to invest a little bit into this. I hear this being thrown around the office all the time. This is the company that we're moving towards, and those kind of things. So just conversations. And that's another thing that we do stress at Thompson Wealth Management. Word of mouth is your best investment source, because you're around the consumers that are doing and investing in the things that are driving this nation in the first place. So start off with your own company that you're working for. That's your 401k. That's the first place that you need to be investing. But then diversify in the other areas from the industry that you're around, in order to have a more knowledge and insight than another consumer would, because everybody's going to be trying to skate to the next trending thing. And then, as you can see, it goes up, it goes down. It's like Bitcoin. Okay, let me do this. Oh, I heard about this. I heard about Shiba. I heard about this. Like, those trending things trend quick. And if you miss it, then, and you weren't in it to start when they first started talking about it, then you miss it. So keep your ears open, eyes open. We call it new eyes, and invest a little bit in multiple areas, so that way you can be diversified and then participate.
And so I'm gonna share something with you guys. This is where the new eyes, the new ears tune in. Lean in close. If you really want to know where to invest in real estate, one of the things that you should look at is the 10 to 20-year metro plan in your area. If you see Metro is planning on building out either rail stations, or they're putting up additional bus lines that are going to go from one place to another, kind of rapid transit, look toward those areas as where you're going to see your expansion. The reason I'm telling you this is that I would say maybe 10, maybe 15 years ago, I had somebody in my church say, "Hey, Metro is getting ready to go down this particular street, and they're going to take it from." For those of you who aren't from California, you won't know what I'm talking about. If you are, then you exactly know. Going from the South Bay, which is kind of the southern end of SoCal, for the LA metro region. There's going to be a train that goes from the South Bay all the way into downtown. Wow. Okay. That's actually good information to know because it's going to go down this specific corridor. This corridor has been infamous for people not wanting to be on the freeway, but using that as a shortcut. Now that I have that information in place, I can look and go, where could I invest that? Because I know, historically speaking, whenever there's a place where they put up rapid transit, those home values appreciate a little bit faster.
Mhm.
So for everybody who was talking about Inglewood, that was part of it. It was the train that was coming through and the stadium that was going up. Now there's empirical evidence that says there's no place in America where if they build a stadium that the property values are going to shoot up all around that city. It's usually like a 2-block radius. It's
Okay.
very small. But the train, that's a whole different story because now we're talking about something that could potentially affect lots of people,
Yep.
shortening commute times, cutting down on congestion on the highways and the freeways, cutting down congestion on the streets. That's a huge piece. So if you're thinking about investing in real estate, just look at what metro plans are for like the next 10, 20, possibly 30 years. That can give you an indication about where you want to invest at if you're talking about real estate, right? Awesome. Well, Shayna, I really want to thank you for coming on this live stream with me today and just really, providing those pieces of value for everybody out there who's like, my money's okay, but I want to take it to another level. Or for people who are just like, I have no idea where to start. This is all confusing. I feel overwhelmed. It's, it brings, because when people hear the word budget,
Oh,
something stirs up inside of them where they're like, oh my gosh, I just know. It's like
yes.
budget is almost worse than a curse word for
I
some people.
know. I know.
It's like, did you just say budget to me?
Ooh, like,
Oh, like,
yes.
my gosh. But trust me, establishing your budget is it's the baseline. You're a business.
Yep.
You're a business. There is not one business who does not build out a budget every single year. It is part of the tremendous strategic plan for a business to build out a budget and then forecast where they see themselves going. You are a business, whether you're a business as a family or a business of one. You are a business and you have to treat your financial future as though you are actually a business because you are, right? So again, start with the budget. If you need help, I'm gonna leave Shayna's information in the description after this video. You'll get if you want to contact her, you want to work with her, you just want to ask her questions about kind of where you start and everything. That will be in the description after the video. But you got to start with step A. That's the
Mhm.
first piece. We got to develop the mindset that this is not something that should be taboo for us to talk about. This should be something that we're talking about with our friends, with our
Yep.
family members, with our children, with our parents who may not have a plan like that, but they still got life in front of them. It's never too late to start. We got to start someplace. So just make sure that you guys take this information and don't just keep it, use it because that's where the power comes from. The information is not knowledge is not necessarily powered, but applied knowledge. That's where you get the power from. So you got to apply it.
Mhm.
So again, Shayna, thank you. Do you any
Yeah.
closing thoughts, any closing words you want to leave to everybody right now?
My only thing that I want to share, because everyone can be at any stage, is making sure that if you feel that you're at a stage that you are solid and you are surplus, share that information with others, so that way those that are at the smaller levels can receive that, and then they can own that and be able to level up as well. Share it with your children, your family, your friends, those that you think may want to hear it, those that you think may not want to hear it. But then also, if you feel like you can't share, go get help. If you feel like you're in the position where you can't share the information and knowledge to other people, then that means that you haven't retained enough information and that you want to be a part of the individuals that are receiving. And just get help, whether it's from us, whether it's watching podcasts where Diedrich's sharing. Just get help. Start somewhere. You got to start.
Awesome. Well, you guys got it right now. You got your homework. You got some stuff set out for you as we get ready to gear into Financial Literacy Month. Don't say you weren't armed with the tools because you got all the tools from financial planning, life insurance, we talked about investments, we talked about savings and budgeting, and all those things which are going to go into what next month is really going to kick off about. So now that you have the tools, go use them. And if you miss part of this and you're like, well, what did they talk about before? There will be a replay. So trust me, you'll be able to go back, catch the replay, jot notes down, take notes so that you're armed with the stuff that you need to ask, the questions that you need to ask. So again, I want to thank Shayna for coming out and agreeing to do this with me. It was a lot of fun. I'm sure we're going to cross paths again at some point in the future. I know wifey's doing Future Millionaires with the kids at her school, so we'll probably cross paths again sometime in the near future. But again, Shayna, thank you so very much.
My pleasure. My pleasure.
Awesome.
Thank
All right,
you.
guys, that's it for us today. I want to thank you guys for tuning in. If you do have questions or we didn't get to your questions, I do apologize for that. But leave me a comment, drop them in the chat, or not in the chat because we're about to leave. But drop me in the comments. If you're on YouTube, drop them in the comments. If you're on Facebook, leave me a comment in there, and I'll make sure that I get those questions answered because I'll go back to Shayna and I'll ask her because that I'm not a financial advisor, so you can't ask me about that. But you can ask me about real estate. I'm pretty okay with that. All right. Well, thank you again, Shayna. All right, everybody. Thank you for joining in, and good night.
Good night.